For 2 decades, a group of wild African elephants has been watched over, studied, and protected by their own guardian angel, an extraordinary American scientist named Andrea Turcalo. Andrea's own story is pretty amazing, but as Bob Simon discovered, not nearly as compelling as the insights into elephant behavior that her research has revealed, especially when it comes to the secret language of elephants. Elephants communicate in a complicated, sophisticated language that scientists are trying to decipher and compile into the world's first elephant dictionary. When we heard that all of this is happening in one of the most magical places on Earth, a remote clearing in Central Africa where forest elephants, the rarest, most mysterious, and most threatened member of the species, congregate, well, we simply had to go.
The story will continue in a moment.
The Sangha River flows through the Congo Basin along the border between Cameroon and the Central African Republic in the second largest rainforest on Earth. This remote corner of the world is the place Andrea Turcalo, a field biologist from Taunton, Massachusetts, has called home for nearly 2 decades. Andrea lives in a compound that she and a group of pygmies built from scratch. The pygmies help her run the place. Commuting to her job is a hike. The last couple of miles took us through some interesting terrain.
Okay, now we're going to enter the forest, and the advice I like to give everyone at this point is to stick together.
Stick together?
Yeah, because if we happen to run into elephants, we should all stay together and move in the same direction so we don't confuse them.
We don't want a confused elephant. A confused elephant could be dangerous. Fortunately, running into one on the trail is rare. So who made this trail, Andrea?
This was made by hundreds of years of elephant traffic in this forest.
Elephants made the trail.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at their feet, it's obvious they do a lot of road work.
The elephants have stomped out the equivalent of a vast interstate highway system. It took us past giant teak trees through a thick primordial forest. Andrea has hiked this trail twice a day for nearly 20 years. Where does it go? We could hear something before we could see anything. Suddenly, the trail ended, and right before us was an opening called the Dzanga Clearing, and more than 50 forest elephants. The setting was extraordinary, straight out of Jurassic Park, tranquil, aside from an occasional roar. Andrea, do you remember the very first time you saw this place?
Yeah, it was in the late 80s, and I actually slept here.
Slept here?
Yeah, and I slept on the ground in a tent. And all night, there was this symphony of elephants. And when I woke in the morning, it was like I had landed in paradise.
The clearing is a watering hole, a spa, and a sanctuary, a place where elephants take their time, the measured, graceful pace of the largest land animal on Earth. They come to the clearing for the minerals, which they can't seem to get enough of. It's a place where elephants play. These elephants are playing sort of amateur wrestling for pachyderms. Nobody gets hurt. Kids fall and get up, the way kids do. This elephant is giving himself a massage, a tree massage. Here's one trying to hide, unsuccessfully. All this and so much more observed by Andrea and others day after day.
It's been now 19 years that I've been observing this particular population of elephants.
Very long time.
Yeah, it is a long time, but it takes a long time to know elephants.
When Andrea first came here, she knew almost nothing about forest elephants. Today, she's the world's leading expert on them. From an observation deck on the edge of the clearing, she collects scientific data for Cornell University and the Wildlife Conservation Society. She watches elephants almost every day for hours, counting their numbers, monitoring their health, and observing their social behavior. What are the basic differences between the boys and the girls?
Females and their young stay together for longer periods of time. As you can see, these groups are made up of adult females and their young. And bulls tend to leave their groups early and be solitary. But they occasionally meet up with their families and speak to each other.
But the boys go off on their own and just sort of drop by now and then?
Yeah, they like adventure. They don't like the group life.
Are there other ways in which elephants are like us?
The females tend to like to be courted by older, experienced males.
Uh-huh, they don't like the young ones.
No, the young ones want to get to the point too quickly.
Now what are they making noise about right now?
That's the Penelope family, and it's their way of saying hello.
Andrea knows it's the Penelope family because she named them, and nearly 1,000 other elephants. She also recognizes them by their voices. Voices researchers are trying to translate into what could someday become an elephant dictionary. I find this elephant dictionary you're compiling exceedingly fascinating. I mean, how large a dictionary will it be?
We don't know. We have to really know a lot more about the behavior of these animals to sort of sort out these different vocalizations and what they mean.
Andrea's expertise brought her to the attention of Cornell University. Peter Regg, a behavioral biologist from Cornell, says the dictionary is still in its early stages.
We're in kindergarten. We're just learning the very first few words. And Andrea is going to help us put those words together.
And you say we're in kindergarten now.
Yes.
Are we in the process of compiling a child's dictionary?
Even an infant's dictionary. It's a very, very complex process because we can't ask the elephant, what did you just say?
But they can match elephant sounds with behavior they can see and classify those sounds into distinct categories. Can you tell me what some of them are?
Well, there's these low-frequency rumbles. It sounds like a big cat purring, and those are the vocalizations that help keep groups in contact with each other. There are protest calls. In newborns, you have a particularly high cry, and when you hear it, you know it's a very, very young calf. And some of these big bulls, when they go into must, which is this sexual state, they make a special rumble, which is very low and very pulsating.
Most days, Andrea works into the evenings, compiling data and exchanging information with researchers back in the U.S. via the internet, which she also uses to stay in touch with home.
This is NPR Worldwide from Washington.
The archive of elephant behavior and sound she's created is amazing and surprising. These fearsome noises are actually elephants greeting one another. Glad to see you. Come a little closer. These are sounds of annoyance. The big bulls are telling the youngsters to hit the road. Back in 2000, Andrea filmed the death of a baby and the traumatized cries of the other elephants. These elephants kept poking the body over and over, frantically trying to coax the baby back to life. Then, the elephants formed a procession that filed past the body.
They'd feel it or they'd smell it, and then they'd vocalize. It was like a funeral procession that went on 3 or 4 days.
Must have been an amazing sight.
They seem to recognize death, and it upsets them. It sort of brought home how emotional these animals are.
But it turns out that these vocalizations are just a small fraction of the sounds elephants make. Until a few years ago, scientists had no idea that most of what elephants are saying can't be heard by the human ear.
The base of their vocalization is infrasonic. In other words, the frequency on which their call is built is below what we can hear.
The elephants use those low sounds to find one another in the dense forests where they spend most of their time.
Elephants are using very low frequencies which travel far.
How far?
At least 2 or 3 kilometers.
No kidding, more than a mile.
Yes.
An elephant standing here can communicate with sound with an elephant more than a mile away.
Yes.
6,000 miles away, in upstate New York, at a lab at Cornell University, researchers are listening to everything from the sound of hummingbirds to the sound of whales. The Elephant Listening Project grew out of an accidental discovery made by its founder, Katie Payne, one of the world's leading experts on elephant communication.
I love animals, right? So I went to the zoo.
The elephant cage.
Elephant cage. And I began to realize that I was feeling a throbbing in my ears and in the air that I couldn't really explain. And I said, you know, do you suppose elephants are making sounds below the pitches that I can hear? And we recorded for a month. And lo and behold, we found that elephants had a great many sounds that people didn't know about.
She gave us examples of sounds that we can hear.
Sound, which I interpret generally as everything is in order.
Everything's okay with the world.
Everything's okay.
But then how do you discover the meaning of these sounds?
You just watch and watch and watch and record and record and record and keep the two together.
Which brings us back to Andrea. Once or twice a year, she visits Cornell with her latest recordings.
And you're giving them the material with which they work.
Yes, this is a scene we filmed on the 1st of May, the first birth we witnessed in 19 years. Oh, they're two females.
After oohing and eyeing over the new baby, as anyone would, the scientists get down to the business of figuring out what the elephant sounds mean.
I'm betting
Like a
that these two
celebration.
calls are the same individual.
Figuring out which elephant is talking, where it's located, and what it's saying has been a big challenge. Researchers initially strung 9 acoustic recording devices around the clearing. As the sound reached each recorder at a different time, they could pinpoint the location of the speaking elephant. Picking up sounds too low to hear was another challenge, but recording the sounds normally and playing them back faster was a revelation. For example, the clearing at night sounds like this. Played back 3 times faster, this is what the clearing sounds like. You can hear the elephant's rumbling calls. But to figure out what the calls mean, the Cornell team spends more time looking than listening. Using these computer-generated spectrograms, they can see the low-frequency sounds.
And then we can actually visually look at the calls.
And what does this visualization tell us?
It tells us that there's incredible complexity. Many of their calls are actually similar in some ways to human speech.
Peter, does all this research into elephant sounds have any practical purpose?
We're using sound recordings to monitor forest elephants because they're so difficult to see. And this becomes more and more critical because their population is threatened. So knowing where the animals are gives us a way to begin attacking what has to be preserved or where do we need to put more protection.
Protection because poaching has become almost epidemic. It's estimated that annually 10% of Dzanga's elephants are killed for their ivory. Andrea works closely with Dzanga's armed guards, but so far their efforts have not stopped the slaughter.
Do you see it as your personal responsibility to protect the elephants here?
I've made it my personal responsibility. For me, if I've been given this great privilege to study this particular population of elephants, I think my priority is to protect them. Otherwise, I have no right to study them.
Excuse me? We have a vocalization.
That's a protest.
A protest?
That's somebody who's probably being refused something by its mother.
Baby elephants protest in a rather loud fashion, don't they?
Yeah, they're just like little bratty children.
Andrea believes if she weren't here, the clearing would become a killing field.
It's clear that, in a very pragmatic sense, you are saving the elephants.
But in another sense, they've saved me. I have something very important in my life to do, and I think a lot of people don't get to do that.
Andrea plans to stay here at least another 15 years, and as night falls over her clearing and fishermen float gently down the Sangha, you can hear the crickets. What you can't hear are the elephants, but that doesn't mean they aren't talking.
When we return, the story of a 68-million-year-old Tyrannosaurus Rex.